So Andrea King, I heard about Grid from Schools from you when I was at, I guess that would have been Closing the Gap class. So thanks for being here
You bet.
and take it away.
So I know I only have 20 minutes. I could legitimately talk about this for hours. So I am going to really do my best. My name is Andrea King. I do work for Smartbox. I am a speech pathologist, licensed in the state of Pennsylvania, and I have worked in early intervention and in the schools for my whole career until I joined Smartbox. So the idea behind Grid for Schools is essentially a new way of looking at bringing AAC and AAC supports into districts. When we look at that, we want to think about it in various ways. And I'm sure everyone on here can, brainstorm and say, okay, I can see this working here and this working here. But the idea is that we wanted to put together essentially a package. So if you're familiar with Grid software, there's Grid 3, which is Windows, and Grid for iPad. So the idea is that this Grid for Schools packaging includes licensing in packs of 10, and you can do mix and match 10 Grid for iPad, 10 Grid 3. And then with the package, it also comes with extra training, depending on which option you choose. There is content, which we will talk more about, and of course the support. But the idea of putting it together was that we wanted it to be more palatable and easier for schools to obtain versus just individual licenses. So we'll go into that a little bit more. So like I said, software, content, training, resources. And the idea is that we want Grid to support all learners, not just students who don't use natural speech. We want to have support for our students in terms of thinking like UDL or multi-tiered support for students who can benefit from visual supports, be able to do more modeling from educators, peer modeling, and then really utilize it multimodally, not only on devices, but if you have funded devices, if you have classroom iPad surfaces, but also on the interactive flat panels and the ability to print them out, place them in hallways, playgrounds, and other shared spaces throughout the schools. There's been a big challenge, and I always joke because I'm a speech therapist, that speech is like the ugly stepchild of the therapies. No one would sit here and tolerate a student without a mobility aid necessarily, or something that is what I like to quote unquote more visual. Whereas with communication, sometimes it's more difficult to demonstrate that justification for a student who might be quiet because they could benefit from AAC, or who could potentially be labeled as someone who has behaviors, whereas that's really communication. So we have these schools that face the challenges of limited access to robust AAC, lack of training in AAC. Some geographic areas more than others. Over the years, I have had education staff say to me, that student doesn't need their talker. I know what they want. I'm not doing this. And it's, hopefully no one else has seen that, but I'm sure there's stories that everyone can share. And there's just inconsistent implementation across classroom settings, depending, and then retraining based on when you're moving grade levels and even buildings. So the idea is that we wanted more of a whole school approach to AAC, with more training geared towards educators versus just clinicians. And then the ability to roll out something on a larger scale using an implementation guide. Because reality, let's say, I know state of Pennsylvania, the caseload cap is 65 for a clinician. Many times it's the SLP who's going to see something like this and say, wow, I love this, I want to roll this out. They are now that champion of the school, and the administration says, well, then you can go ahead and roll it out. And that just time-wise is not plausible. So having some of the extra resources is why we created that, in hopes that it will help. We can go ahead and skip that. And I know you had that link to Mesa. So I put a little QR code on here. Of course, it cut it off, but the little QR code is the link to Mesa Public Schools case study that they had done. And Mesa, phenomenal. Samantha and Becky are two of the ATT members who said, I really want to do this. I want to change the communication culture of our district. And what they did was 240 licenses that they were asked to roll out within one school year, which is wild to me. But the idea that they wanted to embed communication more into daily routines, there's just so much more that can kind of go with it. So this is a quick video. This is Becky, and what she created here is kind of like their core browser of what our new super core See and Say is, which I will show you. And the idea behind this is that they use a lot of Canva, they use Clever to access lessons, they use a whole host of extra websites that you can see on the right-hand side that take them to the link, which brings them into their web browser that they have wrapped with core language. They are a district that preferred word power. They use a lot of word power, so that's what they used it and created it with. And the idea was that they want the educators to go into the classrooms for small and large group instruction who use a multi-tiered support, MTSS, and they wanted to just model AAC without expectation, encourage peer modeling. And you're going to notice the kids in this class have different levels of ability to put together utterances. So hopefully you can hear it. Sarah, shout out if you cannot, and I will try and reshare.
What's about the picture? What do you think is happening? Any ideas?
Off.
Off? Something looks a little off, huh? Do you think she needs her glasses off? Her head's down. Yes, her head is down.
Down.
I know. I think maybe she's feeling a little.
Help.
Yeah, she needs help.
Help.
Nice.
Help.
Thank you. I agree. She does need help. I also think, look, they all want her to do something. That's what it looks like to me. Like all these people are saying, do this, do this.
Do.
And it's too much. Okay, come tell me what you want to say.
You can do it.
Yeah, she can do it, huh? She maybe just needs some encouragement. I really like that. We say that all the time, don't we? Mom. You can do it. That's one of my favorite sayings. Let's go to the next picture. Let's do one more. Woohoo! Okay, come on up. Yeah, you. What do you want to say?
Stop. Stop.
Very, very fun. So the idea, obviously, behind it is being able to do that modeling, that aided language simulation in the classroom, and then just have students peer model as well. So you can read more about the case study. We're going to skip that. Along with Grid for Schools and the licensing is training. The training to me is the most important because this was created in terms of thinking about educators who don't necessarily have any background in communication, speech, AAC. And this goes for paraprofessionals, classroom, specials, pretty much all staff. And it starts in a specific chronological order. So we have intro to AAC, which is very generic. It does not have anything in there necessarily about grid. And it goes to like those myths and the facts about AAC, then moves into AAC in the actual classroom. And then it's going into grid learning pathway. And there's two versions of that. And that's where we hit like software specific. So there's grid learning pathway, which is for Grid 3 Windows, and then grid for iPad. And then course 4, using grid as a classroom tool. This one is unique and bespoke only to the Grid for Schools package. And this one is a lot longer of a course, whereas courses 1, 2, 3, 5, these are all self-guided on Academy. 4, there is 3 modules, 1 and 3 are self-guided, and then module 2 has our live trainer on the other end because they're a lot more specific. And so this next one breaks it down more of what they are. And so you can see module 2 is adapting pre-made grids for your learners. So it's more specific to your district, your classroom needs. Along with that, there are resources. So we have GOALS, which is the acronym, and it's a framework guide for creating communication goals. So this could be beneficial for IEPs, 504s, and not just for clinicians, but potentially for educators who do want to start doing more communication for academic success in the classroom goals and really having that buy-in portion of it. And then we have an activity guide, which is wrapped through SuperCore learning, which is more of like our topic based. And those are all giving ideas on how to use core words in lessons around core words. And then there's the implementation guide, which is like 63 pages of awesomeness. And this is a visual example of the one page on how to navigate it. And it breaks it down based on your role within the district, whether you're an admin, IT, speech, special education, and what pages are there for you. And it's telling you from a tech audit per classroom to communication needs per student in each classroom, to how to talk about this with families and what your district is implementing, to even like social media. So it really breaks it down and gives you a lot of example worksheets and templates that are blank at the end. The content. I will start by saying that any of the Grid for Schools content, there is no gatekeeping. That is free to anyone and everyone who already has Grid for iPad, Grid 3. If you have students with it, clients, if you have an evaluator license, everyone can access the content. You don't need to purchase. So if you have students who are in the class who have any of these, who have dedicated devices or the software, please, please, please feel free to download them and utilize them. That is why they are made. We can go through pricing, or if anyone has questions, we can always do that specific, but what we did was break it down. And there is a 3-year license, 3-year term, because there are schools that want to start doing pilots before committing. And then, like, you know, I heard about the grant, but with these grants, sometimes they are very limited. And so with that, we wanted to make a lower price point to make it easier for schools to be able to access these things too. And then there is, of course, the continuous lifetime licensing. What makes this unique is Grid for iPad, of course, can be managed with an MDM like it always can. And that's still available on Apple Manager as well. But the Windows side, instead of installing it and it kind of sticking to the devices, this is a multi-user network license. So IT is involved, where they take this and install it onto district servers. So if you have a district that, let's say, has 50 licenses, think of it like a pencil jar. And they're like little seats or tokens. If we take one seat out, so there are 49 more licenses available. If you sign out of Grid, or if it automatically signs you out after 24 hours, you're putting that seat back for anyone else in the district to utilize it, regardless of the building. As long as your servers go throughout your district buildings, it can be utilized. Very flowy. I can't think of the word, but yeah, it has a great flow. But there's different options along with the packaging, but it's a whole nother conversation. And then I do want to give a shout out to Kent School District for being our pilot school as well in the Pacific Northwest. And they were just phenomenal. And one of the aspects that we found that we didn't anticipate necessarily was that utilizing Grid on the interactive flat panels really helped the multilingual students with their engagement. You know, I'm sure we can get more information, but that was a really cool thing to hear, that they were swapping and using the change grid set command to go back and forth. So that quick overview of education. If you're familiar with Grid and how to add a grid set, you drop down to the menu on either option, iPad or Windows, and you'll see that there is a brand new, beautiful education option. You'll select that and it takes you to Grid for Schools grid sets, SuperCore CNC, and the Let's Explore. So this is my absolute favorite. I know I only have 5 minutes, so I want to at least wrap up with SuperCore CNC, because I think that this is obviously the inspiration from Mesa, but we wanted to use our flagship software, which is SuperCore. In my mind, this is the easiest or most beneficial grid set that can be utilized in a district. So it looks a little bit different than what Mesa has done, but we still have that web browser. On the top row, we have all of the websites. We put ones there that we thought, well, these are beneficial. I used these before, they've used these before. But everything is changeable with core language wrapped below with some fringe and like topic words as well. So thinking, if I have Canva open and I'm going through my slides or PowerPoint, which is something I used to utilize a lot by pulling in symbols from other subscriptions and putting them into a PowerPoint for that extra visual support. I don't have to do that anymore. I can just pull up my PowerPoint on the web browser, go through my lesson, do my modeling with the core language below it. And of course, we understand that utilizing these supports is not harmful to all students. So that's why it is a tier 1. You could potentially utilize it as a tier 1 support and then go deeper into tier 2 as well with some of the edits. Just the idea of it all and being able to utilize it in this capacity is just so exciting. Like you saw those other students in the video being able to come up and comment and engage with the lesson. So we're thinking about our students who aren't always an AAC user, but potentially we have been not identified yet or have some sort of language disorder where maybe potentially they feel more comfortable responding on the device versus with natural speech. There's just so much that goes into this. In addition to, we are also aligned with Common Core state standards, which is awesome. There'll be more on that. You can always ask questions. The Let's Explore grid sets, which go into different events in the US and UK. And this is based on obtaining like student prior knowledge and working with what they need to move forward. Lists of resources, which like I said, I can send this to you, Sarah, and you can have all of this as well. I will put that at the end. I know I only have 2 minutes, so I want to be able to leave some time for questions and go over more of the grid sets. But if you have questions, myself or Ken, we are always able to help. If you're looking for complimentary evaluator licenses, you can scan that and ask us, and we can make sure you can find the link. If you have questions on Grid 3, iPad, Look to Learn, Look to Read, Look Aloud, Grid for Schools, we're here to help.
Thank you so much, Andrea. This is really good information. There's so many pieces to this. If you have questions, maybe go ahead and put them in the chat since we're running so quickly. I apologize for that. But also, Leslie Reitel is here, I know, today from Kent.
Yes.
So it's potentially she would be interested in answering some questions about what this looked like in her district.
Leslie's your go-to.
Volunteering you, Leslie, but I know you're open.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to say we have over 400 students that are using Grid just as their AAC app. So not all of the Grid for Schools stuff necessarily, but we do use it very similarly to how that's described if anybody does have questions or ever want to collaborate on it.
Thank you. So Andrea and Leslie, as you, before we move on, if you don't mind putting your emails in the chat, and I know Andrea will follow up with me and we can we'll send a follow-up email to everyone here today with any links that aren't here. And they will also be in the slides. So thanks so much, Andrea. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.